In last week's episode, we sailed to the naval town Karlskrona. We did some sightseeing in the town and also got to do some deck maintenance. In 1 nautical mile we will go through the main entrance to Karlskrona. They actually have a submerged wall, sea wall, with just a small opening. And that was of course also a thing from the Navy to prevent or protect the waters from intruders, make it harder to get in. I see a lot of bunkers the whole way on the wall and cannons. Then I see those small bunkers over there, like really low down close to the water. Today's leg will be around 16 nautical miles in total down to Utklippan, this cool place that we didn't want to pass by without seeing it. It's basically a big rock where they have blown out a harbor, and they built that for the fishermen back in the day, so they didn't have to go back up to these islands every week, so they could stay down there.
Yeah, we tried to sail, but there's hardly any wind at all. And now it just died.
But it is so peaceful. It's so quiet. In a way, I love when the weather is like this, but you shouldn't have be in a rush to your next destination. But it's just nice to be out on the ocean when it's this calm.
After a while, the sails filled again, and the wind was back. The lighthouse and Utklippan appeared on the horizon, and we were closing in on the island.
Hit ska vi. Dit. Our new navigator, she is keeping a close eye on the course. Gör du det? Ja. Kolla här. She's looking.
So you can enter this harbor from 2 directions, and we're coming from the western side now.
The harbour was built between 1939 and 1942, and the 2 openings makes it possible to enter the harbour in any wind direction. Hur djupt är det? Utklippan feels remote somehow, even though it lies quite close to the mainland. What a unique place.
There used to be gates so they could close off the inner harbor. Because this harbor, when it's heavy weather, they say that there's a lot of surge in here. No waves, but a lot of surge, so it's easy to rip your lines. But the gates aren't working anymore. I don't know. Malin told me that the harbor master, it was a lot of work to use these gates, so they just stopped using them, and I guess it just deteriorated after that, so now it's not in use anymore.
Making some lunch for us. Just very simple. Fresh pasta and some flavor creme fraiche with feta cheese and sun-dried tomatoes and some shrimps. Vera is tasting pears for the first time in her big, I don't know what you call it, big tasty pacifier, food pacifier.
Was it good? Jäklar.
I think we have to protect our food. There's someone else looking hungry.
So these are the 2 rowing boats that you can borrow to go over to the South Island. Södra skär, I think it's called in Swedish.
Det var fel håll. Men liksom, just det är tvärt. Nej.
It was a while since you did this, right?
This won't be in the video. Men alltså, jag blir förvirrad.
How's it going? Try to stay in the middle this time.
Yes, I'm aiming. I'm trying to aim straight. Almost there. The South Island has a small restaurant and hostel, situated in the old lightkeeper houses. Is this smell like you can have from like a basement? It's like a little wet, humid, or damp or mold. Oh, it's so narrow. Okay, almost up.
Yeah. Wow. What a view. The lighthouse was turned off in 2008, so it's not in use anymore. And it was built in the 1870s. But there's been a lighthouse here all the way since the 1700s. But back then it was like a basket with glowing coal that they just hoisted in a pole, I think, for the ships to see. I saw a seal, but I think it jumped in the water again. Quite many of them. At least, I don't know, 30, 50?
We have to take the dinghy now and go on a seal safari. Wind and rain stopped us from going out with the dinghy, but the next morning we launched the dinghy and drove out of the harbor. We're on a seal safari! it's coming over. One is coming over here, so curious.
There's quite many of them, but I don't know how many there are, but this is supposed to be one of the largest seal populations in Sweden.
The grey seals seem to thrive here, and some years there have been over 1,000 of them on the rocks.
They're not as loud as the sea lions and no fighting.
Är det spännande? Det är såna sälar där borta. Det är som sjöhundar. Sea dogs. But it's not Barry. Other sea dogs. He was right here. Oh, these low pressures makes you so tired. We're sailing now towards Stenshamn, a little island over here, close next to Utlängen, which is furthest out in east you can come in the archipelago. We saw with the binoculars there's already a sailboat in the spot where we plan to stay, because it's a very shallow harbor and there is like only a few places where we can go in, and it looks like it's already there, so we'll see if we can go in front of it. It stays alongside on a pier. Otherwise there's a outer pier where we might be able to moor. There's only 2.3 there and we are 2.2. So we'll see. We have rounded this big hole shallow spots with rocks. So we had to do like a detour of like 2.5 nautical mile. Oh, we're leaving again. Have to go the whole way back around. We tried to stay on the outer pier, but we touched ground, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
So we asked the boat that was on the other dock how much their draft was, and it was 1.8. So they could have gone further in, and we asked them really kindly if it was possible for them to move, but they said no, we're not moving a millimeter, we won't move, and that was it. So
now we're at Flacksjö, so it's only a couple of miles from Stenshamn, and we're going to anchor here. And there's a really cool story about this area that I will tell you more about later.
now I think we have everything. If we're gonna go ashore, for example, we need to go in the water. We have this. Okay. Ska du sitta där nere, Vera?
So we're going to go over to some rocks over there, a shoal, where in 1981 there was actually a Whiskey-class Russian submarine that went aground here. They said that it was a misnavigation, that they had some problem with their navigation system, but of course it was something else. So these are the rocks where the submarine went aground, and it was actually a fisherman that saw the submarine in the morning when he passed by here with his fishing boat, and he just saw this Russian submarine standing here on the rocks, and he approached the boat, and the guys on the submarine, or the Navy personnel, the Russian Navy personnel, they pointed their machine guns at him. So he got quite shook up, so he left the submarine, and he went ashore on an island close to here where he knew that he could find a telephone, and he at a friend's house, and he called into the naval base at Karlskrona, to the chief in there. And of course, the whole Navy personnel in Karlskrona, they sent out boats here. First, the Swedish Navy wanted to tow the Russian submarine off the ground to be able to examine it. But the Russian Navy, they wouldn't, or government, they wouldn't allow that. So, of course, there was a bit of a diplomatic issue. The Russians, they sent a small fleet with the warships from Kaliningrad, and they were actually approaching pretty close to Utklippan, our last stop. The Swedish Navy, they of course tried to block them. They had a towing ship with them, so they tried to force this blockade to get in here and probably to tow their submarine off the ground. But after a while, I think the reason that they turned around was that the Swedish Navy turned on a special signal that they only use in wartime. And at least that's what people think, that this was a deterrent enough that the Russians thought that, okay, the Swedish Navy will actually shoot at us if we approach further. Because first they thought that, okay, no problem, we will just go in there and take our submarine back. But the Swedish Navy wouldn't let them. So after a lot of diplomatic debacle, the Swedish Navy was allowed on board the submarine to do some examination of it, and they brought the Geiger counters to see if there was any uranium on the submarine, and they actually got readings of that. So they suspected that there were nuclear warheads on the submarine. Quite a big thing back in the days during the Cold War, and of course this whole area here in Blekinge is the headquarters more or less for the Swedish Navy, so of course it wasn't a navigation error from the Russian side. They knew exactly where they were, but they probably made some mistake once they were inside of the archipelago. Just imagine coming in here with a submarine at the time, and the charts that were official at the time, you couldn't see all the depths and stuff, so they must have had a real hard time to navigate in here. So I can really understand why they went aground. So you can see the placard up there, depiction of the actual submarine. It was a Whiskey-class submarine, and this whole thing, was called the Whiskey on the Rocks. Yeah, and of course there's a lot more to it than what I told you now. But eventually the Swedish government decided to release the submarine. Yeah, they towed it off the ground, actually during a gale, because the submarine was pounding against the rocks, so they didn't want it to sink, I guess. So they took it off the reef, towed it out, and then they returned it to the Russians in international waters.
We're gonna dock here and we'll go for a little walk on the island. Jag tror vi kommer ända in här faktiskt. Där kommer Sten. Nu står vi på Sten. Now we're standing on the rock. There are stone foundations on the island that shows that more than 60 people lived here on Flakskär in the late 19th century. And the island also has traces of older settlements. The families who lived here lived from fishing. The fishing boats were 3-man rowing boats. Herring was the most important catch. And the women were in charge of sails, rowing and sailing to Karlskrona. It's quite far away from here to row to Karlskrona. Such an exciting day, with both seal safari and finding the spot where a Russian submarine went aground. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoy watching our videos, please consider becoming a patron to support our production. See you next week, and until then, take care.